Well, hello everyone. It's good to see you. Getting close to the end of the show. I hope everyone's had a good time. Out of curiosity, how many people here got to see Bill Buxton speak at either the keynote or in his breakout session? Okay, because we're going to talk a little about two topics that he brought up in the context of all of this. One was BXT, the business experience and technology troika that holds up all good work, and the other thing was his call about being the call to be a luthier and building great experiences that are fitted to a particular task. My name is Nick Katsavelis. I'm technology director at RGA. RGA is a 30-year-old company that started out doing special effects for Hollywood. Along the way, they're picked up an Academy Award, and some other things happened as well. For a shop that was all about super high-end computers and rooms full of SGIs that cost millions of dollars, and custom-developed software to create these special effects. Essentially, one day, everyone woke up and we found that commodity hardware, regular desktops, and off-the-shelf software could recreate the same sort of stuff we were doing. And as a result, our market had been commoditized. And we had to find a different way to take what we do, which is creating stories and fusing art and technology to bring these stories to life and find a new place to play and do that. So around the late 90s, moved into the interactive space and subsequently into the web. And that's where we are today. We're now one of the leading digital agencies globally, and I'm not going to make this a commercial, so you can go to our website, rga.com, and find out some more about us if you're interested. But over all those years, I've been in interactive for 20 years plus. There are a couple of things that continue to come up and that we're constantly trying to work around. And a big one right now is, let's move on a little here. I got a little clicking problem. Okay, let's see if this will work. That's about us. What we have to do is responding to commoditization. And this is something that is happening everywhere. It doesn't just happen in the technology industry. It happens in athletic shoes. It happens in publishing. It happens in people who manufacture handsets. It happens to people who have services like wireless services, whatever it is. And it's happening also at a personal level. People are susceptible to commoditization as well. And so you see the rise of concepts like building your own personal brand. And people who are bloggers or big Twitter, have a zillion followers, are the kind of people who are doing this personal branding. And that's how they break out of the crowd. And that's what keeps the value of whatever it is that they do up. And not driving towards zero as you tend to get with commodity. This, of course, is all pretty much basic economics, and it's also the foundation of brand management. And this whole notion of brand management is key to what ended up being the birth of Madison Avenue and the advertising agencies in the late 40s and early 50s, where their task was, companies would come to them and say, we have tissues, and they're like every other tissue. Help us find a way to differentiate them, either on real physical benefits or on intangible things, and create a story around them, and build, make these products exciting, and give a person a reason to want to engage and choose that particular product or service over another. And Madison Avenue was a hotbed of the great storytellers. They did did it in print, they did it in radio, and then television came around and they moved into television. One thing that's worth knowing is that they would absorb these new media as they came along. So TV was a big shift. And also another thing to keep in mind is the way agencies tend to work at production level. They come up with a big concept, they sell it through to the client, and then they say, we're going to do this TV spot, and it's going to do this and this. And then they would job that out. They'd go to production houses, and so most of the production work never really happened within the ad agencies. And subsequently, with the birth of the web and the rise of a new medium, the ad agencies really went about things as business as usual. They said, okay, we've got a story, we have a brand, and now we have to get it on this internet thing. We don't know about this. Let's find some guys that we can outsource this to. And the web shops were born in the late 90s and into the bubble when that burst. But for better or worse, web shops at that time were building on the technologies that were available and the expectations that were available. And a lot of that was doing systematic design and trying to get static content onto the web in a way that was nicely presented, easy to navigate, and easy to update. And with that, I mean, we start to get into what is content management systems and their rise. And I think it's important to step back a little and get a little perspective on CMSs and where they come from. I remember it was, probably 96 when I saw my first content management presentation from a company, and they were out of the news editorial business. Others had come out of document management. But one thing that was clear was everyone was coming up with systems that managed a document-centric presentation through an editorial process and then finally out into the world. And the big concern was how nice you could make it look, but that we were always talking about these documents, web pages, essentially. And if we think about things and step back a bit and get a little more perspective on what agencies had been doing at a high level, agencies, for the most part, their clients are the marketing and branding folks in an organization. And both traditional and digital agencies, their bread and butter is creating messages and experiences aimed at target audiences and delivered in a context via some medium. So what does that all really mean? It means that they're taking their story, which is the big overarching umbrella, chunking it down into an appropriate way to deliver it over the radio, over TV, whatever it was, and get someone. So drive time radio was a big thing, and there was a whole formula for how you created drive time radio advertising. And that all went well, and then we hit a point where suddenly, well, it wasn't working so well at all anymore. And that's recently, I'd say in the last 3-4 years, we start to see a big drive away from you see marketing departments starting to put a lot more money into digital agencies and letting digital agencies take the lead. And either way, it really all comes down to telling stories. And digital agencies tell these stories a lot like the traditional agencies did. They use a lot of similar media, except they're digital. So they do print, and sometimes it's ebook related stuff. They do radio, and sometimes it's sponsoring podcasts or doing things on Pandora or whatever it is. And they do out of home, but it's giant digital signage in Times Square and driving awareness that way. And it can be TV, but it may be inserting ads into Hulu as opposed to buying time on the networks. And they do, also the basics of of banner advertising, that's in there. Game placement, developing games, applications, all kinds of things. And the contexts they deliver them into on telephones, in gaming platforms, on computers, on outside signage. It's happening everywhere. And, a lot of those experiences are not at all document-based. It's all about stories. And there needs to be, at the bottom line, some narrative, some pictures maybe, and then some sort of technology that weaves it all together. And it could be a printing press, it could be a microphone, it could be a campfire for everyone to gather around, cathode ray tube, or a microprocessor. And digital agencies do their best storytelling in the digital media, I should say. And if you've ever been to a brainstorming session in a digital media firm, and how many people here work for digital agencies? How many people are in marketing departments that hire digital agencies? Okay. Just out of curiosity, what's everyone else doing? Just straight development?
Yes.
Okay. So if you go into the average brainstorming session at a digital agency, it is absolute and utter chaos. It's madness. People are pitching things that, as a technology guy, I know could never happen, certainly not in the time frames and budgets. Things that just sound silly, and why are we talking about this? But ultimately, you let them go, and they come up with some great ideas because there really is a method to their madness, but we all acknowledge that it is indeed madness. And containing that spark of creativity and giving the teams a place to dream up stories and be free from constraints is a key thing. So about this time, I'm sure you're all wondering, what is this guy talking about, and what does this have to do with content management systems? And it's a totally fair question, and it really requires that we focus on this notion of stories. And that's what we've been hired to do, is to create something that stands out from the crowd and really takes a brand and lets people see it in a new light and bond to it and want to be driven to the actions that the messages in marketing are telling them to do. And most of you probably know this. It's pretty evident. I mean, that's what advertising does. And believe it or not, that's a lot of what gets done on the web. It's about marketing. But it's not about documents, right? So ultimately, it's, you can say there are stories, but stories and documents are not the same. And the story is about an experience, and a movie is not about a document. There may be a script behind it, but that's not what it is. And I guess what I'm really getting at here is, and it happened to me today. I got an email this morning. The first thing, it was a creative brief for a pitch that we were doing, and in it, amongst other things, these are our goals marketing-wise. This is our problem. We're having a hard time getting noticed with this new line of products we've got out there. What can you do? And oh, by the way, we're using content management system XYZ, so let's fit it in there. And to me, this happens all the time. I mean, at least every other engagement, someone will come and embed a solution into their problem and say, we need you to help us break out and be a breakout brand. You've replaced our traditional agency. You're our go-to guys for our big ideas. And then they put us back in this box, which relates much more to the work we were doing 10 years ago. And I'm not going to say that there aren't times that you do have document-centric stuff that has to get done, and there's some excellent CMS products out there that really knock it out of the park and let you do some fantastic things. But when someone comes in and says, we're having brand issues, marketing issues, you don't want to know that you're going to be locked into only one type of solution, and that means that tool choice often dictates the medium and the context and limits the creative options open to the team. And as UX people who might be in the audience, that's really what it's about. You're trying to engage these people and make something happen. And if I, force you into a whole bunch of different tools, where are you going to end up? And I'm going to go for a little analogy here, and if you consider this, and if you buy into this idea that what ad agencies do is actually tell stories, and you say that stories are essentially like food, well then, the collection of document-based stories is a subset of all food, and we'll say it's sandwiches, just for argument's sake, and there are a lot of different kinds of sandwiches, and some of them are really delicious, and some of them are pretty plain, and they come in different shapes and sizes, and there is some differentiation there. But when you get right down to it, of all the greatest meals you've ever had, how many were sandwiches? Maybe a couple, maybe half even, but not all. And when you're looking for a breakout kind of situation, you really want to have all your options open, and sandwiches are not necessarily it. The other thing is the whole process of using, when you're in a document-centric universe and everything is standardized, you end up looking for recipes. Okay, we've got this great idea now, we'll just follow the same pattern, we know this is going to work. Let's do it. The creative part is not the recipe, right? Following a recipe is not creative. That's just, you're just following along and recreating something else that was creative. The process of making those recipes, you have to be in the kitchen, and you have to be getting messy, and you have to gross yourself out a couple of times, and do things that people are saying, like, you're going to mix this with this? That's going to be terrible. Why would you do that? And then you test it out on people, and some people say, hey, I like that, but it's not spicy enough. And okay, you mix it up again. And all the while, you're keeping some record of what you're doing and keeping track of it, but it's a loose process, and you're not really sure where you're going to end up. And then, when it's finally done, and it's a success, and you've been able to serve it up the first time, if it's worth writing down as a recipe, you write it down, and then you can commoditize that and bang them out again and again and again. But when you come to a digital agency, you're not coming for our recipe book, right? You might as well just look on the web at the work we've done and try to knock it off from there. If you want us to come and give you the same thing we gave someone else, you're by definition taking a commodity from us, and we're trying to help you break out of that. So recipes are important, though, for mass production, and because they're repeatable and they're knowable, and you can price against them, and you can make regional twists. And so I don't want this all to sound like I'm against content management at all, because I'm not. I'm just saying that it has its place, and it's not for everything. So when you've got to get a whole lot of textual information across, and it has to go to multiple different localizations, and you have an editorial flow, fantastic. Let's get that on, and we'll give you a great template set that works. And the first build, however, is not going to happen in the content management system, right? The creativity, the tool is not creative in and of itself. The creative process of design, visual design, and information design happen outside in other tools. And only when it's codified and complete, yes, if you're going to use tool X, you understand its limitations. But when you've got the complete thing, then you start to deconstruct it and reconstruct it in the system so that you can get the mechanics of it all working right, and then really draw the power of a content management system. But for breakout brand experiences, and this is what we're doing, and why you would go to if you're going to take your agency business and give it to a digital agency, that's what you want. You want them to give you the whole package, not just the implementation of this one piece. So when you're in a mass-produced kind of situation and you're making sandwiches, the other thing is that content management systems, if you're using them on a broad scale, is that you're empowering your organization or ancillary people within that organization to, without risk, contribute to the process and put something in that fits into the system and looks great and there's no risk for failure. And you're essentially taking as many options out of the equation as possible and giving them something very simple to work with. And ultimately you end up with peanut butter and jelly sandwiches because they're easy to make. And the one that my 7-year-old makes pretty much tastes the same as the one that I make, although my buddies, the designers who put this together, seem to like to put jelly on top of the peanut butter, and I like to put the peanut butter on one slice of bread and the jelly on the other. But that's a small implementation detail that really doesn't affect the whole experience. But you know that pretty much anyone can come in and make them for you, and that they taste pretty good even when they're made well, and that's great. But is that really what you want? So part of what I'm getting at here is getting away from embedding the solution into the problem set. When you find that your organization or your client's organization is mired in a situation where they're really bogged down, they need to break out. And by break out, I mean be noticed. Be a product that people see, understand, and bond with. A product that people take to heart. And everyone's got little things where this is happening, and there's plenty of psychology that drives behind this. People know what they're doing and make you do these things. But keep the solutions out of the problem set and let the people who create these experiences and tell these stories run free. And when the story is clear and then the execution pieces become clear, how you take the story apart and all the little pieces that play out and all the different contexts. How do we make this work for drive time radio, and how do we get them when they're on the web, and what do we do for mobile, and are we going to do signage outside? That these are all things. It's a much bigger system. You really have to think about it. Saying that we're going to use tool X to drive this whole experience is just it's going to scuttle everything. I think really a lot of it, what it comes down to, is when you engage with a digital agency, or within a traditional agency for that matter, but we're here to talk about digital, is you have to engage them and you have to trust them, and trust is really the critical piece. You've got to bring them in and at a high level. Let them know. You have to tell them all your secrets. They have to get to know, and this goes back to the BXT piece, business experience and technology. You've got to have all three of those parties from the client org and from the agency org sitting together. They've got to open up to each other and share their biases and their fears and understand each other and get into it. And you have to, this level of trust where, if we're going to stay on the food analogy, if the digital agency is a friend who's coming over to make you dinner, they really have to know what B, X, and T all like to eat, and what they don't like, and why they don't like it, and how you can create a single meal that will satisfy all of them and really knock them out, and something that they've never had before, and it's the thing they'll talk about for years to come. Turn your agency loose in the kitchen. Put some money in their pocket. Let them go to the market, augment what you've already got in the kitchen, and then let them rummage through your cupboards and start putting together a meal. They know who you are. They know what you like. They understand what the end goal is this great time that you're going to have together. And let them just do their thing, right? So they're in there, and it's like, okay, I've got a KitchenAid here. Well, I'm not going to use the KitchenAid, but the waffle iron, maybe not. You should use the panini machine. We just bought it. It's fantastic. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a halibut and stick it in the panini machine. And I know it doesn't really sound like a good idea to you, but believe me, it's going to turn out something fantastic. And oh, by the way, I brought this big can of liquid nitrogen, and I'm going to freeze some stuff, but don't let it near the kids. And actually, you shouldn't touch it either, and I'm going to take it away when I leave because it's dangerous stuff, but let me tell you, this dinner is going to be fantastic. And At that point, you need to bring the whole family to the table. And everyone needs to be in there. Too often what we see is we get in with clients and we're engaged mostly by the marketing team. They bring us in. We're an agency, right? That's what we do. But we're a digital marketing agency. And that means that we're invariably going to have an intersection with the IT org within the client organization. And what I've found is that often the Chief Marketing Officer, CMO, and the CTO or CIO are like, the symbol of Byzantium, a bird with two heads, each facing in a different direction. And they have completely different outlooks on the world and different weights on their shoulders. The marketing team has to respond quickly and jump on new fads or new trends and test things out and throw things out and keep things moving and stay relevant and fail often and fail early, and that's great. And I build an app and 6 months later it's gone. Whereas the IT side is all about continuity and compliance and uptime and making sure that when you come in, your email is there, all the corporate data is there, and the ERP system that actually drives the business from a getting your goods out to stores kind of thing, gets things built. They're all about, let's do this in a professional enterprise way. It has to run, it has to be planned, it's got to be careful. We can't make any mistakes. The marketing people will say at the same time, hey, if no one comes to buy our product, there's no reason to make it, right? So digital agencies come in a lot of times, and because we bring a fresh pair of eyes, and it's in our vested interest to bring these two groups together, it's sort of like, okay, you got two competing siblings. One's the social one, and the other's the sort of hard-working, not so social one. And we go in, but we're friends with both of them. And when you can build that trust across those divides, that's when you really start to see multiplied results. Now, the IT team may tell you, look, we invested a lot of money in this CMS, and we think it's standardized, and we want to be standardized. I don't want to have 10,000 different things running in my shop. It's too hard to manage. Those are the times when it's like, okay, let's find some creative solutions. Likewise, the marketing team may be like, I don't have time to do any of this stuff. I don't want to understand the constraints of, say, getting at product data through firewalls. Everyone needs to just sort of give a little, take a little chance, and at that point, we start to see the value of each of the orgs, marketing's value and IT's value, start to grow exponentially, and you start to have breakout experiences. And we've had this with a few clients in the past, and when you bring the whole family to the table with trust and someone who's creating an experience that's going to actually draw everything in together, you end up getting a new sensation that everyone can enjoy. And our firm, again, this is not intended to be commercial by any stretch, but if something we did for Verizon with their Droid campaign, we took over the NASDAQ sign in Times Square and the Reuters sign, and we wrote the software that controls them and synchronizes them. And we were able to put up a big thing where people could call in, do a voice search, say New York Rangers, and it would appear on one sign, and then a giant map would show, a pin would drop and would show you where Madison Square Garden was. And people were in Times Square watching that. And yes, there was a website that went along with it, but the content the website was showing was really just real-time video of Times Square. So, here's a whole experience. And the whole thing actually was powered by 4 Android phones that we'd hacked to actually do the voice recognition piece and feed it back into our system, because that was the only way we could get at the API. It was actually in the phone. And, content management didn't even come into it at all because there was no content to manage. And at the end of the day, the experience was over. We packed it up and we took the phones back to the office, and it was over. So there was no reason to make it systematic and repeatable because it just didn't need that, but it had the impact we needed. And so with that in mind, there are other stories too that I can go into, but I think that's the key thing, is that you've got to pick the right tools and tell the stories you need and stay in context and do the right thing for the right audience in the right place. And ultimately, there's a lot of things we do. Some of it fits into content management systems, and some of it doesn't. Some of it lies outside, some of it touches. That's great. But don't, if you're hiring an agency, don't put tools in their hands and make them use them. And if you're an agency yourselves and you're in that position, work really hard to say, look, we need to relax the constraints and really solve the problem, and then we'll pick the appropriate tools and solve it out. And when you find that, east-facing, west-facing, different approaches within the groups, it's no time better spent than to heal that rift and find ways to make them work together. And you'll find that the solutions that you come up with and what you're able to deliver will be far more exciting and have far more impact for those brands and actually change their businesses and give them new opportunities and help them move on. So with that, I'd like to be challenged by anyone who, if they have any challenges or any questions, I'm happy to answer. And that's about it for right now. Yeah, sure. Can you step up to the mic?
So do you ever find that in the context of talking with a client that there is really the call and the need for a content management system? Not that they've defined it for you, but that in your listening to their description of their problem and not being dictated that they have to have a content management system, that part of the solution as part of your proposal includes a content management system? Or is that not typically what your agency?
No, actually it happens a lot. And a lot of times part of the business transformation and helping them break out is they may be an org that has sites, they may be a global company, they'll have different sites for each brand vertical that they've got, and then for every country we had one that we were talking to, and they were looking for something just really glitzy, and we said, well, look, you've got a systematic problem here. Your brand is inconsistent across the globe. You never tell the same story. Let's get you into a systematic design system. Let's leverage what you've got brand equity-wise around that. Tell your story clearly, the core story of your thing, and then on top of that, we can build out great experiences and also take them global, because now we have a consistent way of deploying across the globe. So absolutely. Anybody else? I must have offended someone. Come on.
All right. So we have a web portal, okay, and it's been a lot of discussion between marketing and the IT department, just like you said, the same conflicts where IT says, let's do it a project, let's do it this way, let's do it so it's sustainable, it lasts a long time. Marketing says, no, we have to do it quick, it's a window of opportunity. However, when do you know when you're talking about web portals in the internet, when do you know when a content management system is necessary? If it's 10 pages web page, if it's 50 pages, 20 pages, 30 pages, I understand the whole thing about developing a story and telling the story through the web portal.
Right.
But when do you think, you say, you know what, you need a web content management system behind it, or you don't need it?
Right. So it's a good question. And the first thing that comes in, are we assuming this is a client that already has something up, or they're starting from scratch?
Let's say that they're starting from scratch.
Okay, starting from scratch is the good one, right? Because if you're going to pick a content management system, maybe you'll pick one that you like, kind of thing. So you're not, but I think that when you go back, so going back to storytelling, it's about how much story they have to tell and how often does that story change. And how many different ways do you have to tell that story? So if it's 10 pages and you're going to put it up and they're never going to update it and it's only in one language, no, you don't need it, because you're going to have to build out those pages in just straight HTML anyway before you can rip it apart and make templates out of it. So you might as well just build it once and put it up there, and then the edits are easy, and it's easy enough to manage. If you get into situations where things are changing much more often, or level, the content is hundreds of pages deep with multiple authors who are not necessarily sophisticated, then you're going to start looking for a system. Likewise, any sort of sizable site that has to be localized for multiple languages or regions, those are all times to really start looking for that. And, the people who build these systems have tackled these problems, and some of them are really thorny problems that you have to get into because, if you're going to be doing a design, it's, for English, and then suddenly you need to do, right to left languages, you want to know that there's a system there that's going to be able to handle that and keep it all coherent and provide a nice, easy path for translations to happen and do things. There's no quick and dirty rule, but I think that inevitably you're going to build the core templates yourself by hand anyway. Once you see that, you can step back and say, look, how hard is it to manage this, and where do we go from there? Anything else? This is the shortest session I've been in. But I think that's okay. We don't have one. So that's another interesting piece. Being a digital agency, we're completely technology agnostic, right? We go deep on a few technologies. We're a deep Microsoft technology shop, but we have no allegiances because ultimately we're serving our clients and we're coming into an ecosystem that exists. And in the same way I don't want them pushing a tool down my throat because I have a story to tell, they don't want me coming into their shop and telling them, here's something that you're going to have to live with for, the next 6 years or whatever it is. So we come in, we try to live in the ecosystem they're in and bring the best we can there. And sometimes it means switching their technologies, but more often than not, it's us adapting to them.
A couple of years ago, I sat on a plane with a guy that owned a digital media in New York, very successful. They do the web portals for Fast Company, Inc., and some of their houses out there. And what they said, if the country to take my client, if the requirements cannot be met with Google, I won't take it.
That may be a factor of the size of that agency or whatever. We're a 700-plus person agency with 135-plus developers and skills in all different platforms. So for us, we can't do that. Certainly, there are people who are specialists in given niche technologies and or in product stacks, and that's fine. And in those situations, we would go to someone like that and say, hey, we need Drupal experience and expertise. Here's what we want to do. A, tell us if this is possible, and B, are you interested in partnering with us and maybe doing the execution part of it? Anyone else? Thanks. I'll say a little bit about the slides. The slides, I purposely went out of the usual process in the same way. We have almost, it's like a human content management system for slide production at our agency. I mean, you can imagine 700 people. We do a lot of presentations, and PowerPoint decks are constantly getting churned out, and there's a standard look and feel, and there's a set bunch of designers who do them, and they do a great job, and some of them are very engaging, but I decided that I should go outside, and I went over to our digital studio and talked to some of our motion graphics guys, and they put this together, and they gave it to me all in layered Photoshop files, and we decided to just flatten them out to pings and drop them into PowerPoint. So it's really not a PowerPoint presentation, and it was really liberating to be out of PowerPoint and to be able to get type rendering that was smooth and nice and really nicely anti-aliased. And so a little change is good, and they had a great time doing it too. They hadn't done anything like this in a long time. So with that, I think I'll yield back the rest of the time. Thank you.